Hey y'all, I played Black Flag for the first time back in August of 2020, back when I was only 15 years old. I recall hearing that Black Flag was a real highlight for the franchise, and as I was playing them all in release order at the time, I was excited to get to it, especially after the weaker third entry. Unfortunately, I really did not like Black Flag at the time, to the point where it took me a month and a half to complete a 22-hour game because I just frankly didn't play it. Black Flag had a much weaker and less important modern day storyline, a bigger focus on exploration, and less emphasis on the stealthy assassin fantasy, and more so on the pirate fantasy, with a huge open world to explore and a ship to steer. At the time, it just didn't feel like Assassin's Creed. Now, here in 2026, of course Black Flag feels like Assassin's Creed. The AC franchise has stepped away from linear, stealth-focused gameplay and more towards massive RPG games. Yet, coming back to Black Flag now with its remake after playing all of the modern RPG games, it's clear to me that Black Flag is more similar to these RPG games than the originals. All of the things I disliked at the time, the weaker in modern day, the increased focus on exploration, and decreased focus on the assassins, are all things you could also say about the RPG games. When Resynced got announced, I wondered why Ubisoft would remake Black Flag first, instead of something that actually needed it like the original. At the time, I assumed it was because Black Flag is a fan favorite and one of the most popular in the series. And while I do think that is true, I actually think there's another reason for it as well. The original Black Flag was a stepping stone for the series and a precursor for the modern RPG era. I think Ubisoft is trying to do the reverse with Resynced, and trying to step back to something closer to the more linear style of the older AC games. After playing Resynced, I think it's successfully able to update the original to create a balance of the older and new styles of AC, while also being a pretty good game by its own right. In this video, I'll be taking a look at the story, exploration, and combat. Quick note about spoilers, I will be giving a basic plot setup and talking about some of the character arcs in this game. I will not be giving away the ending or any surprise moments, however, and will try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. Because of this, I'm confident you can watch this video before playing the game. Black Flag is widely considered to have one of the best stories in the entire franchise, and even after playing for a second time all these years later, I can say that I certainly disagree. I just personally don't think this story is nearly as good as some of the best in the franchise, like AC2 and Origins. Yet, looking solely at the modern era of AC, this is easily the best story since at least Odyssey. The story in Resynced is more mediocre than the best of the older AC stories, but when compared to the poorly written, poorly told, and content-driven approach to the series as of late, it's a massive improvement. Black Flag's story takes a step back from the assassins, at least relatively for the time. Kenway's main goal for the story is to find something called the Observatory, which he believes he can find and sell for tons of money. The observatory was built by the ancient race of the Isu, who are very important to the series as a whole. Many AC games can be boiled down to the assassins and Templars fighting over a piece of Eden besides this one. Black Flag does include this franchise trope, yet it's more so in the background of everything, as it's clearly not the focus of the story. Kenway constantly has his hunt for the observatory on his mind, yet he rarely actually progresses that goal until late into the game. The actual focus of the story is giving the player a vessel in Kenway to live out their pirate fantasy. Much of the story follows Kenway and his pirate friends trying to follow their dream of acquiring mass amounts of gold, living free from the English government, and creating a city without kings. While the observatory is always a constant motivator for Kenway in his various wealth schemes, much of the time his goals align with helping his friends or helping the city of Nassau. Libertalia, the famous mythical pirate city, is mentioned by name here in Black Flag, although the city of Nassau is what actually takes that place. Nassau is their pirate utopia, and over the course of the game, it's slowly invaded and destroyed by the British Empire, with Kenway and friends doing what they can to stop it. The game does a really fantastic job at making the player care about this, more so than the typical AC stuff, because the story is framed in a way to where it makes you care. While it is Kenway's story, you get to embody him and live out your pirate fantasy through him. A central conflict of the game is the thought that very same fantasy is slowly coming to an end. This story is the precursor to the modern AC story, as every single game before this and after this up to Syndicate is completely focused on the assassins a large majority of the time. Games like Odyssey, Valhalla, and Shadows, however, are the opposite, as the main goal of the story is to put players into the role of whatever time period they're in, exactly like Black Flag. Just like those later games, Black Flag uses the assassins as more of a backdrop, while the actual story is driven by the fantasy, politics, and personal goals of the historical role that you're playing. Black Flag's story perfectly fits into the modern context of the series, as it too is more concerned with letting the player be a pirate instead of being an assassin. There is one big difference between the modern AC games and Black Flag's story, however. Black Flag's story is actually well written, acted, and mostly well told. Because Black Flag wants to create an accurate pirate experience, the story is more character driven rather than plot driven for most of its runtime. While the game's basic plot may be Kenway's hunt for the observatory, it's his character arc that actually takes the center stage here, and it's overall pretty great. Kenway's real main goal for the story isn't to reach the observatory, but actually to just make enough money to set him and his family up for life. Over the course of the game, multiple flashback scenes between Kenway and his wife Caroline take place. They live in what's essentially a shack, and Kenway wants more from his life, while Caroline is reasonably happy with what she has now. She loves her husband and loves her little life with him, while Kenway is blinded to that by wanting more. It's a similar arc to that of Walter White from Breaking Bad, as just like Walter, Kenway is also unhappy with his life and wants more from himself, and is blinded to all the bad decisions that he's making in his search of more. This is why the Nassau stuff works so well, because even with all the signs around him that he's making bad choices, Kenway is still blinded by his pursuit of riches. He thinks he does it all for his family, and yet he left his wife for years to go chase this dream, essentially abandoning his wife to chase his own goals while pretending he's doing it all for her. This is where the assassin stuff comes in. I think the reason the assassin stuff is so de-emphasized in this game is because Kenway initially doesn't see it as a way to reach his goal of becoming rich. He's not invested in the assassin or Templar conflict and is willing to side with whoever as long as they help him reach his goal. That's why I actually think the relative lack of assassins in this game is actually a positive, as it completely fits in with the story and Kenway's character arc. It also just so happens to align with the franchise's modern approach to storytelling, which Ubisoft clearly took notice of here. One thing I really love about this is how it makes the Assassin's Creed itself part of his story. When he first meets the assassins and is told their creed, nothing is true, everything is permitted, he doesn't really understand it. He says that he's already living by this creed because he lives a life of freedom, taking and doing exactly what he wants. As the game goes on, however, particularly at the end, he comes to truly understand what the assassins meant by these words. The pirate and assassin's lifestyles are similar yet completely different, and narratively, the game juxtaposes the two. It makes perfect sense why the game puts one in the background to focus on the other, because that's exactly what Kenway himself is doing. I do have one small issue with Kenway's character arc, being that I don't think it's gradual enough. Over the course of the game, Kenway and his lifestyle is constantly facing hardship as his friends and city face the wrath of the English government. And yet, much of the time, he pays no mind to this, and instead sees it as another obstacle to cross on his journey to wealth rather than something to actually reflect on. Towards the end of the game, when Kenway actually makes his switch, I feel like it kinda happens too quickly. He essentially finally fails at his goals and is finally forced to make a change, and he does. Yet, I wish there could have been just an added moment of reflection where Kenway could have looked back on his actions and decided to make a change rather than being forced to do so. Ultimately, Black Flag's story is about a man trying to live a certain lifestyle when the world doesn't want him to. This reminded me of another game, Red Dead Redemption 2. Black Flag is RDR2 before RDR2, as it largely has a lot of the same goals. I actually think Kenway fits the role of Dutch more so than Arthur, as just like Dutch, he is blinded to all the bad decisions that he is making, chasing a dream that'll never come. Unlike Dutch, however, Kenway actually is able to reflect on himself and make a change, one that led him being able to atone for his past mistakes, not only with the assassins, but with his family. What works so well about Arthur's character in RDR2 was that Dutch was his mentor. He would do everything Dutch told him to do, and over the course of the game, he slowly started to doubt Dutch and see the error of his ways. That's why many of the random missions in RDR2 still fit the story, because Dutch and Arthur shared the same goals, to make money and to support their gang, and every single mission, big or small, supported that. Because Kenway simultaneously takes the role of Dutch and the playable character though, this is not the case. Kenway is the only one in the game who actually cares about finding the observatory, so none of the quest givers in the game share this goal. Instead, many quests focus more so on the pirate life aspect of the game rather than Kenway's arc. This is how you get entire sequences dedicated to helping Blackbeard get medicine for people in Nassau. It makes sense in the story as Kenway is a pirate and shares the dream of creating a free city, and thus he must help keep the place going. Yet, I think missions like these slow down the pacing and progression of the story/arc for little gain. Much of the story is following Kenway helping other characters with little goals like this, and I just don't think it really adds much. The thing is that I just think besides a few characters like Mary Reed, Adewale, and Blackbeard, many of the characters here are just not very memorable. Characters come and go from the story because they essentially just go on a mission or two with Kenway and then leave the plot for an extended period. I don't care about helping many of these characters because much of the time it doesn't have much of an impact on the story, the characters aren't even memorable, and it just feels like a prettied up side quest in order to pad out the game. That's why I think this isn't the best AC story. Kenway's arc is great, and the use of both the assassins and pirate fantasy to convey that arc is amazing. The writing is generally good too, but I just feel like a lot of the characters and missions here just don't feel essential to this story, which made me feel uninvested at times. I never found the game to be boring, but I did find it to be meandering at times. I wish this story could have just been tightened, as it's an already great story that could have been amazing. One controversial change Resynced in particular makes is the almost complete removal of the modern day storyline. This is in line with what the modern day storyline looks like in the modern era. The thing is that the original Black Flag is the start of the downfall of the modern day. AC3 concluded the original modern day storyline started all the way back in the original game, and so Black Flag needed to start something completely new. What resulted was this weird first-person walking simulator that kind of hurt the pacing of Kenway's story rather than being anything interesting like the Desmond stuff. While the modern day story was interesting in the original Black Flag, I'm actually glad it's gone here. It helps the game's pacing as well as making the story even more immersive. On top of that, I actually think it makes perfect sense why the modern day is gone in the world of Assassin's Creed. See, in the original modern day plot, you worked at Abstergo Entertainment, which turns the lives of ancient people into video games, essentially just a stand-in for Ubisoft themselves. And you as a player were essentially playtesting Black Flag in-universe. While they did have ulterior motives, of course, Abstergo were still making games. That's why I think this Resynced angle could work, as instead of remaking the old modern day storyline, they could put in a new one and reframe this as an in-universe remake. This way, they could continue with the RPG era approach to the modern day storyline, while also continuing on with the story. I do think the Desmond games would be worse without that story, however, but depending on if they replace it with anything good, I could even see that removal working there too. One big negative with Resynced, however, are its cutscenes and facial animations. In the almost 13 years since the original game released, it seems that Ubisoft has gotten no better with either of these things. Many cutscenes are exactly the same, which look fine. Some new ones clearly follow the procedurally generated stiff cutscenes of the RPG era. In this game especially, they just look out of place compared to the motion capture ones, as characters just seem so lifeless, and their faces are blank half the time. I really hope in future games, Ubisoft moves away from this approach to cutscenes, because it's just not working anymore. While the story was left mostly intact, it's in its gameplay where Resynced makes most of its changes, with a new engine, more content, and more loot to find. Despite that, the bones of Black Flag can still be found here in Resynced, with honestly this game being exactly like how I remembered it. The changes that were made here in Resynced just sharpened what's already there, bringing it more in line with the modern RPG games and modern game design as a whole. Black Flag's world design is similar to the modern era, with a large open world filled with tons of islands, big and small, forts to take, and even multiple cities to explore, each with their own activities and map markers to clear. Every single piece on the map has something to do, with all of it fitting within the pirate fantasy. You have warehouses to pillage, contracts to complete, and even a series of Mayan ruins you can explore. While the actual amount of landmass is small, the world still feels large and tailor-made, which is a balance not all the RPG games can pull off. The reason the world feels so big is because most of it is water. Because this is a pirate game, Black Flag emphasizes exploring the world on your ship, along with ship combat. I think this is a really great idea, as sailing from place to place is always fun to do and rewarding. See, on the way to your destination, you will almost always run into other ships which you can enter into combat with and board to steal their stuff. It's very immersive because you're always on the lookout for your next ship to attack and board. What makes this system in particular so great is how it creates a rewarding and addicting loop. Each time you successfully board and take down a ship, you get a few options. You can either heal your boat, usually all the way, lower your wanted level, or put the ship in your fleet. Because of this, you are always incentivized to stay on your boat and keep boarding ships until you get to your destination, as you never need to go to land to fix up your boat or clear your wanted level. On top of this, you get tons of money and resources from the ships you board, so it's always worthwhile to take down a ship. I do think there is one issue with this system, however. While I did find the gameplay loop to be addicting at times, it can also be annoying at times, especially within missions. Towards the end of the game especially, some missions will ask you to fight multiple ships at a time, and the ship combat will really just kind of break down when this happens. The ship combat boils down to just shooting a boat with your left or right cannons over and over again until it dies, which usually does work fine when going one-on-one in the open world. In missions, however, usually you are in more cramped spaces, which means it's much harder to pull off. Because you do the most damage from your left and right sides of the ship, you're always going to either want to be pulled up besides a ship or circling around it. Since many missions take place around islands and have a bunch of rocks, it's very easy to unintentionally run into something, which can lead you to getting stuck due to how slowly the ship handles and taking tons of damage or just straight up dying. While the ship being so slow is realistic, it doesn't make it fun to play with, as you can easily get into a bad spot, be outnumbered, and just be screwed. I will say I didn't upgrade my ship much over the course of my playthrough, maybe buying less than 10 upgrades the entire game. The upgrades here are your typical ones such as more health, more cannons, and more ammo. There are some new weapons you can buy, however, like the mortar, which is admittedly a really great addition to the weapon roster. I don't think any of these meaningfully fix the fundamental issue of the ship combat though, because even with the mortar, you still are just shooting your left and right cannons most of the time. This is the main reason as to why I disliked Black Flag so much when I played it for the first time all those years ago. The game had such a heavy emphasis on ship combat and I just didn't like it, especially at the time, so I just had a hard time getting through the game. Thankfully, Resynced adds a few quality of life features to make the ship portions better. First off, the game has a Pathfinder feature, which will automatically take you to your next objective if you turn it on. The graphics, of course, have also been improved across the entire game, which makes exploration much more engaging. More content has been added across the entire map as well, which makes it easier to get resources to upgrade your ship. The biggest change, however, was the addition of difficulty options. Resynced adds highly customizable difficulty options with 4 different settings, being combat difficulty, stealth, naval combat, and activities. One mission late into the campaign makes you fight 5 ships at once, and I just got stuck on this mission because my ship just wasn't upgraded enough. Thankfully, I was able to turn the difficulty down just for naval combat, which saved me from getting frustrated and wanting to quit, like how I felt all those years ago. Resynced doesn't only make changes to its naval combat, but also ground combat and stealth. One of the biggest changes with stealth is that it finally introduces a crouch button, which wasn't introduced into the series until the next game, Unity. The thing is that, since at least Origins, the series has been moving away from stealth, and Resynced is no different. While there still are tailing missions, assassinations, and enemy camps to clear, I actually think Resynced has less of an emphasis on stealth than the previous AC game, Shadows, for example. One of the biggest selling points in Resynced's marketing was how it completely changed tailing missions. Black Flag is notorious for its large amount of tailing missions, and Resynced sought to fix this issue by removing the fail state from them. Instead of failing the mission when you get caught, the game will allow you to chase down or even kill the person you're tailing. I think this is a great idea on paper, and clearly Ubisoft is learning from the same issue from their recent Star Wars Outlaws. The issue is that since there is no consequence for failing, why would you bother going in stealthy in the first place? AC Shadows has two main characters, Yasuke and Naoe, with Naoe being the stealthy assassin character and Yasuke being the combat-focused character. Naoe was able to enter combat, however, it made more sense for her character to focus mostly on stealth, despite also not being forced to, like in Resynced. In Shadows, you could also get spotted at any point and not fail the mission, however, there was a consequence. It was significantly easier for Naoe to take out enemies via stealth, and while she could try and kill everyone via open combat if she gets caught, it's very likely that the player won't be able to do so with her kit. So she has a built-in consequence for getting caught even if the game technically doesn't set one. She could technically still clear the camp or whatever, but she'll probably get killed instead. This is what Resynced is missing, because Kenway is both the stealth and combat character. If Kenway gets caught, he can easily transition into combat with absolutely no consequence at all, as he can take on many enemies at once in a way Naoe can't. I don't think this game has no emphasis on stealth, as there are tons of missions that are clearly set up for the player to stealth through, and at least one mission where you can still fail if you break stealth. It's just that Resynced tries to add the option of avoiding stealth to make it fall in line with the modern games, but just like them, it makes trying to fully clear enemies in stealth pointless. Why would I take the time to slowly clear out enemies stealthily if I can just easily kill a few of the harder enemies in stealth and then take out the rest via combat? It's a lot easier, faster, and potentially more fun. The combat here in Resynced has been completely redesigned from the original, trying to keep the feel of the original game while adding in a modern parry-based system, and I think it mostly succeeds. It's a pretty simple system of where if you can perfect parry, you're able to one-hit kill an enemy. The game also retains the chain takedowns from the early AC games, where after a perfect parry, you're able to one-hit kill a certain amount of enemies based on your equipped loot. It's a decently easy to learn, flashy, and fun system that makes combat just as engaging as it needs to be. I do think the combat here does have some issues, however. I used the starting swords the entire game, so once I got the hang of combat, it didn't change much. The thing is, I don't think the combat has much depth beyond that anyways. There's 3 types of swords, however, they all seem to be similar and only change your heavy attack, which I rarely used anyway. There is also only one type of pistol. Loot can come with different perks, so maybe these can be used to make interesting builds, however, I don't think you ever need to do so because the combat is so easy. The swords I used let me take down 3 enemies after a perfect parry, however, this ability has no cooldown. It was so easy to just perfect parry, kill 3 enemies, and then wait to perfect parry again and repeat. I know that this was an issue from the early games, such as AC2 for example, but the difference is that AC2 is an almost 17-year-old game. Resynced is a modern game and its combat should not be this easy and simplistic. Some enemies cannot be one-hit killed, however, such as the tank and captain enemies, who will deflect your attack and ruin your chain. This seems like a really good idea, as it forces the player to pay attention to who they're trying to chain kill. It's just that it's so easy to not only get another chain going if it gets ruined, but also to kill these enemies in general. All it takes is one shot from your pistol to remove these enemies' defense, letting you then one-hit kill them. The game also lacks enemy variety beyond the normal kind and these two. Sure, these three types of enemies can have different weapons, but none of them fundamentally change the gameplay experience. This combat sandbox needs more interesting enemy types because it's just so simplistic otherwise. If the combat depth cannot come from the mechanics, then it should at least come from the enemies that you face. Overall, Black Flag Resynced is an interesting remake. It takes what was already there and only slightly updates it in order to bring in more in line with the modern era of the franchise. It's got a vast open world with tons of content, allowing the player to live out their own immersive pirate fantasy. It pivots away from stealth into a more player choice kind of model, letting players choose how they want to approach situations. The combat has been redone to include a modern parry-based system. Despite all that, it does still retain some of the DNA from the original series. The combat retains the chain takedown mechanics from the original games. The ship combat is almost identical to how it was in the original, for better and for worse, with only a few quality of life changes. Most importantly, the story, while seemingly more in line with the less assassins-focused modern games, uses the Brotherhood and their creed to tell a well-written and mostly well-told story about Edward Kenway and how he changes as a person. Black Flag Resynced is a good remake. While it does keep a lot of the things about the original game that I didn't like, it also improves upon a lot of it too, bringing it closer in line with the modern RPG era of the franchise. My favorite thing about this game was being able to go back into Black Flag and reevaluate it through the lens of the modern era. While at the time I felt like it was an outlier for the series, I can now see that it was just the start of what the series would eventually become. With that in mind, I can now officially say that I like Black Flag, and I think it's a great game. It's still not perfect or the best game in the series in my eyes, but I definitely had a fun time here. Resynced successfully proved itself as a necessary remake in my eyes, and one that I hope is a roadmap for future titles in the series. I can't say that I think AC should only focus on remakes, as I am excited for new original titles. However, I think entries such as the original could massively benefit from a remake. Honestly, I'd even love to see remakes of my favorite entries such as AC2, and this game just does a great job. I recommend Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced, 7 out of 10. Well y'all, that's my review of Black Flag Resynced. If you like this video, please make sure to like, comment, or even subscribe. Please also make sure to check out my TikTok at goodusername011. That's all I got for today, but I do want to take the last few moments to talk about me and my channel. Oh, alright y'all, don't have too much to talk about today. Really, the main thing I want to talk about is just like how I butchered this video. Like, I'm so upset about how my voiceover was like today. Like, I absolutely love this script. I think I did a great job with it. And I think my like central observation of like Black Flag is a lot like an RPG game. Like, I never noticed that before. And I'm really proud of myself for writing such a long and thought out essay about that, right? But then I just like go recording and then it's like I keep messing up and messing up and messing up. And it's like, it's small mess ups. Like I just pause for a second or I say a word a little weird. But it's like, that's not enough for me to restart because I'm hot under this. And I've been recording for probably, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. I don't even want to be doing this. Like, I put this off a day and a half because I finished the script yesterday. I worked on it all day yesterday. And then I was like, well, I don't want to do it today. So I moved it to today, I guess, you know. And it's like, I don't want to do this already. And I'm messing up this script that I was so proud of, and now this video isn't going to be good. You know, like I do think it has something to do with like I'm recording it, so it's like all in one go. So it's like I'm noticing the buildup and it's like getting worse and worse and worse in my head. You know what I mean? But it's like, so maybe I'm just like overthinking it. And also, like, in the video, will it probably be noticeable? Not badly and not that big of a deal, but it's like, in my mind, it's annoying because I want to do a good job, you know? I don't know. It's so annoying. So it's just like with stuff like that, it's like, I don't know how to improve, because it's like the only way you can improve is by doing it more. And it's like, I am doing it more, right? And it's also like, I can't really make improvements to my videos. Well, I can. I mean, I guess I did my 2 videos ago, but it's like, it's hard to do that because I'm so busy and I'm so behind, like, that I have to, it's like go, go, go. And it's like, I don't have time to think about it. And I don't have time to like re-record a video until it's perfect and all that stuff. So yeah. So yeah, I am recording this, let's see, the day after the Mafia DLC came out. So I finished the script yesterday, which was the day of the DLC, and I decided to not start it because I didn't want to go from writing all day to playing a 2-hour DLC in one sitting to writing more. So I'm gonna wait until after this video is out to start it. But yeah, that will be next. And then Crimson Desert, A Plague Tale, I want to play those 2 games beforehand, so I might put that off until I do that. So my next video after Crimson Desert might be Blood of the Dawnwalker, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say. You know, just like next video will be Mafia DLC. So, yeah, thanks for sticking with me, guys. If you watch this video, I really appreciate it. Just try to look at my words, if you can even extrapolate them. I messed up the words, too. Like, I said the wrong words at sometimes, too, which is always annoying. But whatever. Yeah, thanks for watching, y'all, and I'll see y'all next time.